Curtis Brooks. I am executive coach helping high achieving men. I wanted to do this impromptu live stream this evening here, talk about the untold story. And that untold story reigns true for most of us as men. So whether you're a high achieving man, so again, we're talking about the untold story, men redefining success, discovering authentic purpose. This is going to be a great conversation, guys. I'm excited about this conversation. Again, this isn't an impromptu live stream here. This topic here just kind of just touched my heart this morning here. And hey, what's going on, Robert? Thank you for joining, man. Appreciate you here talking about the untold story for us as men, and obviously women have an untold story as well. But we're talking about men. That is my client. Hey, what's up, brother? How are you? Happy Monday to you as well. Thank you. So again, we're talking about the untold story, and for most of us as men, again, in the space that I'm working with men as high achieving men, it can be definitely a challenge because oftentimes we have relegated success to the end and be all, and that is what our that is what we're trying to achieve. But here's the challenge. Oftentimes, in working with these high achieving men, the challenge is most of these men are feeling empty. So I just did a conference, or not so much a conference, a webinar, free webinar, just like last week on the 9th of December. And we talked about that. We discussed that pretty much in depth in regards to just how men are achieving achieving success. They reach the top of the summit, but most of them are still feeling empty, and there's a reason for that. And we want to explore that. We're going to dive more into that. But again, as I said, my name is Curtis Brooks. I work with high achieving men, and our goal here is to counsel, dismantle those myths, and help men to get into their purpose. And oftentimes we can, as men, we can just society as a whole, not so much what men, we're not necessarily I'm not saying that anything that we're doing wrong is, that's not the point. Point of it is I think society as a whole, we as men, we can oftentimes see success as purpose. We can see success as, hey, I've finally arrived. But I tell you, if not, I would say nearly 90% to 95% of the men that I'm working with, they have reached a powerful level of success. They have a lot of things that they dreamt of, or things that they didn't dream of, but they have reached the top of the summit, and they have become very successful for themselves and their families and everybody else that's connected to them. And that's just one of the problems. And in working with these men is that once they reach the top of the summit, most of these men are saying, "What next?" Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing. As a man, you may have experienced this in regards to where's that people are saying, "Well, what's this guy crying about?" And then I say that very loosely, and because most men are, we're not necessarily in that space of crying. Most of us aren't, but I think what happens is that we're afraid to get to that place where, not that we're crying, but we're afraid to get to that place where we're want to be authentic about where we're at. And obviously, that may not necessarily include crying or anything necessarily emotional, but it does include us as men being able to tell the truth. Because, hey, let's face it, success, in a lot of ways, success is something, it's subjective. From one person to another person, it looks differently. But I see success oftentimes as, again, that external thing. Again, it's nothing wrong with being a success, but again, in most cases, oftentimes the challenge that I work with in dealing with the men on the level that I'm working with them is that they reach the top of the summit and they're saying, "What next?" Many people are applauding them and say, "Hey, man, you got a great life. You can pretty much go where you want to go, get what you want to get, buy what you want to buy, and just do life on your level according to what that man desires." And a lot of people applaud that. But here's the challenge: is that the men that I'm working with, they're not necessarily seeing it that way. And it's not that they're ungrateful. oftentimes with success, again, success being a myriad of different things that a person has achieved, and I would even venture to say success is oftentimes something that society has put together in regards to their level or its level, if I could say their or its, a level of achievement or a level of accomplishments that just looks good on paper. But inwardly, the men that I'm working with, they're empty. They're empty, guys. And that's just the crux of this conversation. We're talking about the untold story. And oftentimes that is the untold story, is that the men who are high achievers are truly empty, and not in its entirety, but there's some kind of system there, belief system. But in most cases, the belief system is nil. And the reason why I say belief system, because ultimately it's the belief system that holds it all together. It's the belief system that holds it all together. Now, that's worth saying yet again for the third time. It's our belief system that holds it all together. And without a solid anchored belief system, what happens is that we can find ourselves as people, especially as men, we can find ourselves not anchored in a particular understanding, not having come to not having come to grips with the conflict that comes with life sometimes. And there's conflict that shows up in life. And we as men and people in general, but as men specifically, we have to come to a consensus where we have ordered this chaos, this conflict, where we have wrangled this conflict and put it in order to the point where we've mastered it so that it's not mastering us. And and in most cases, the only way that we can do that is that you've got to have a belief system that that filters through the stuff that we may endure through life. And it's not to say that men don't hurt, obviously, and have gone through certain challenges, because we all have on some level. Absolutely. But for us men, we need a belief system. We need a belief system that challenges the just a mainstream thought of views or different perspectives. We need a belief system. It's like having a secure belief system is like sending out an army of men who you can just rest comfortably in that space and say, "Hey, you know what? I trust the men that I'm sending out. They've got this. I trust the men. I trust that my belief system, I'm so secure in my belief system that I can be at peace in the midst of the seemingly confusion and chaos that's going around me, because within me, my belief system is secure." Now, here's the challenge oftentimes is that because oftentimes a lot of the high achieving men that I've worked with, it's not to say they don't have a belief system, because I do believe every person has a belief system, whether it's secure or they're anchored in it on some level, or however deep that belief system goes within their own psyche. That's yet a whole nother discussion. But nevertheless, I believe every person has a belief system. And the challenge is that when we send that army of soldiers, so to speak, and I'm speaking figuratively, when we send that army of soldiers representing our belief system, when we send it out, send them out, and we can find that our belief system has been now challenged or um, threatened with the belief system or a societal system that has been created. Directives from people who don't even know us, and we can find our own belief systems being challenged with that, or the army of men that we've sent out being now persuaded, coming back with the intel, so to speak, And now we can find ourselves persuaded because we put all of our trust on that belief system. And the belief system has essentially failed us. And so we as men can find ourselves squandering or just going there and about to find something secure. And oftentimes we haven't found something secure, we end up taking on a belief system which the world has established, so to speak, us from a societal perspective. And we know that that belief system often changes throughout history. It changes. It is just a known fact. And if again, if we don't have a belief system of our own, what is there? What are we left to do? We're left to take upon a belief system or ideology that has been given to us. And because it's given to us, here's what happens. Because we've accepted that, hey, man, my belief system has failed me. Again, I believe every person has some kind of belief system or different ideologies that they find themselves or believe themselves to be anchored in. I do believe that. But our belief system has to be able to stand the test of times, guys. And when it does not stand the test or pass the test, so to speak, it crumbles. And when our belief systems crumble up under the weight or the microscope of society's views and perspectives, we've got to be prepared to go back to the drawing board because rest assured, when our belief system crumbles, there's absolutely going to be a societal view or perspective that's ready to that's ready to fill in that gap with something. Because the reality of it is that we're not going to get out of this world. We're not going to escape this world. We're not going to leave this world without believing in something. And whether that something produces fruit or not, we can find ourselves, especially if it's not producing fruit according to our own belief system, you're producing something completely different than what you have believed in. It's time to go back to the drawing board. It's time to go back to the drawing board. But if we're not willing and able to go back to the drawing board, because here's the thing, oftentimes people have been so entrenched into their belief system, the traditions of their families and things of that nature. And I just believe there's a higher belief system for us as man that as just men and just mankind, I'll put it that way, excuse me, that absolutely can stand the test of time. So the men that I work with, unfortunately, a lot of them are not anchored in a belief system that can stand the test that can stand the test of time, especially through the eyes of a societal uh, uh, perspective and the scrutiny of a society that scrutinizes. I'll put it that way. Uh, Different perspectives. So basically, if we as men are not in line with how society has put things together, a society has put things together, we can find ourselves again being scrutinized under the weight of a society of people, even within our own households, have placed a burden on us. Say, hey, why aren't you going the same way as everyone else is going? And now here's the thing: as men, especially high achieving men, we already know if you've achieved some level of success, you're already accustomed with going against the grain, so to speak, to a degree. I said to a large degree, because success doesn't often follow the person who And I understand that success is subjective, but to a level where we are able to live the lives that we are desiring, success doesn't often, on that level, I should say, living a life that you desire and that you can take care of your family and take care of other families and just live that life and being able to do what you desire to do. Success often doesn't oftentimes come to that measure for people who are just marching to the same beat uh, of everyone else or playing the same tune that everyone else is playing. So as a high achieving man, we understand that you've got to basically dance to the beat of a different drummer, so to speak. But we've also have to be prepared to take that to another level because what happens and working oftentimes with the high achieving men is that we can find ourselves having danced this tune, so to speak, to a different drummer and doing our thing and having achieved different measures of success. But the true measure of success is when a man finds his purpose. And this oftentimes is that once we have paid homage, so to speak, to the to the I would even say the gods of this world, once we are exhausted with paying homage to the gods of this world, we can find ourselves again reaching to the top of that summit and being empty. And hence my subject, my title of this conversation is The Untold Story. And so what happens as men, as people, guys, as people, you oftentimes we can find ourselves locked out of our story. We can find ourselves locked out of our story, the story that truly needs to be told. And if we're locked out of our story, oftentimes, again, that story that truly needs to be told. And if we're locked out of that story, we're locked out of the story that connects us to a purpose. We're locked out of the true story where we can discover who we truly are. And let's just face it, myself included, guys. I think many of us we have been marching to the beat of a particular drummer and the to the beat of a society that has created, so to speak. We've been marching to that beat, and it can take years, guys, to uh, get yourself together where you're saying, "Wait a minute, there's got to be more. There's got to be more." So. Uh, it can be a challenge, guys, getting to that place. It can be a challenge because you truly have to be prepared to to deconstruct some things that were put together in most cases, maybe even not by you. Some things were already established, and some things are already spoken. We have to be prepared to deconstruct some things, deconstruct some myths, to completely obliterate and bust up some myths that are just not true. In fact, they're just myths. We have to be prepared to deconstruct those things as men, and it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to go up against what you have believed for so long. It's not easy, guys. It's not easy. And it's not about just being a man and pounding on your chest. But when our minds are locked in on a particular view or perspective for so many years, again, let's just take it just from a traditional perspective. When our minds have been locked in on a way of doing things, a way of speaking, a way of just behavior, so to speak. When our minds have been locked in on those things for so long, guys, it absolutely takes courage to come out of that thing. It absolutely takes a sacrifice. And I'm not speaking of, a sacrifice back in the day or just maybe years ago. I'm not speaking of offering sacrifices or as animals or anything like that. I'm saying it takes a sacrifice of ourselves, guys. It takes absolute strength to be able to deconstruct our own views. It takes strength to look at ourselves in a mirror to say, hey, Curtis, you're going the wrong way. Man, I'm going the wrong way. Guys, if you're listening to this conversation, share this conversation out. The purpose of this conversation is to encourage us as men to be prepared to tell that story. And only the way that we can tell our stories is that we must be prepared to face ourselves. And facing ourselves, let me clarify that. And facing ourselves meaning to face ourselves with courage. We must be prepared to face ourselves with courage and be prepared to deconstruct the lies that have been told. If you find yourself going in the wrong direction, hey man, you must be ready to say, hey, you know what? Let's make a conscious effort to bring ourselves back to an understanding, bring ourselves to just turn the light on. And it'd be very difficult. Thanks, Lamar, for joining, man. Appreciate you. It can be very difficult being prepared to turn that light on when we essentially have been walking in a dark space for so long. It takes courage to turn this light on, man. It takes courage to admit that, hey, I did not know. It takes courage to admit that we were wrong. And again, when I say wrong, I'm not using that to blame or for blame, but it takes courage to admit that, hey, I've been given the wrong information. It takes a lot of courage, guys, to look at ourselves in the mirror. It takes a lot of courage to say, man, I was going the wrong way. Now I've got my family in this nonsense. Because rest assured, even as a single man, I'm married, but it's just hypothetically, if you are a single man, looking at this from that perspective, and at some point you are getting married with the same or with the wrong information, again, uh, about who you are, so to speak. Again, I'm using this in the sense of a reflection. If you are looking in the mirror and you've got the wrong image of yourself, you see yourself in a negative light. And let's just say years later, you find yourself as a man getting married. Now you're producing children out of this same understanding, guys. The understanding doesn't vanish because because you're no longer that man. You're not that man in the mirror anymore. You're because years have transpired. You're now 10, 15, 20 years later from the man who was once looking in the mirror who had that negative reflection as he looked in the mirror. You may have be 20 years away from that moment, but just because time has gone by, if we as men have not addressed the thought pattern, taking another look at the man in the mirror, perhaps with a different set of eyes, so to speak. When I say different set of eyes, meaning different thought process now. You're looking at that man in the mirror with a new mindset now. And that is essentially the only way that we're going to give birth as men. Again, that uh, our offspring are going to be brought into this world by the manifestation or the a new an a new thought process. And without that new thought process, a man renewing his mind, we're subject to bring in the same produce the same seed as the man who was looking in the mirror 20 years prior. So it is absolutely important for us as men to, again, to do the self-reflection, to know where these things are coming from, to know that society has defined us as one way, and we have to be prepared to redefine ourselves from a perspective that sets us free, that sets us free, guys. And the truth of the matter is that it can be very difficult to do this without the help of another man who's found his way. It'd be very difficult to do this without another man who's found his way. Because again, it absolutely takes courage, guys. It takes courage to be that man to look in the mirror, to say to himself that I need to make changes. I'm producing these results over and over, and I frankly, I don't like the outcome. I don't like what I'm receiving. My family hasn't been able to eat properly. Whatever the case might be, whatever you may be dealing with, it takes courage to admit that to ourselves, guys. Because at the end of the day, especially as men, we are held accountable. We're held accountable. Hey, William, thanks for joining, man. Thanks for joining. So at the end of the day, we are held accountable. We've been talking about the untold story. And for each of us as men, there's absolutely an untold story. That untold story is on the other side of success. Success, I know, is subjective, and most of us as men, we get that. There's different levels of success, and for one man to another man, that success is can definitely look different. But here's the challenge: success in itself is not only subjective, but success in itself is, in most cases, fleeting. It's something that has a tendency to vanish, and we can find ourselves on that hamster wheel, so to speak, throughout life, trying to chase that thing, chase the carrot that the society has placed in front of in front of our face, and we can find ourselves again chasing that carrot and feeling successful in 2019 and not quite as successful in 220 in 2020. And so really essentially up and down like a roller coaster, up and down like a roller coaster. And for a man who who understands this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Success has a way of feeding us what is immediate. You know, the immediate gratification success. We can do it right now. And go where I want to go right now. So success has a immediate gratification, but oftentimes success in the eyes of this society, the world that we live in, and even in the eyes of our own understanding, oftentimes success is fleeting. And as I mentioned earlier, in working with high achieving men, this is often the case. This is often the case, guys. Believe it or not, it is often the case with even with high achieving men, even with men who are very successful. In most cases, they are they are successful. They can pretty much buy anything they want, do anything they want. They can hop on a jet and go to Paris, Frankfurt, Germany, wherever they want to go. But overwhelmingly, the clients that I'm working with are feeling empty. They're feeling invisible. They have reached the top of the summit. And again, 2019 was a great year, but 2020 may not be so great. They are, in most cases, still able to experience a level of success. But again, because success is, in most cases, so fleeting, um, again, and subjective as well, they themselves have to deem themselves as successful, but also according to those on the outside, what that success looks like on the outside. On the outside, what others have conjured up in their own minds of what that success looks like. And here's the other piece. Oftentimes, men who are successful, guess what they have to do? We oftentimes flaunt that success. We can find ourselves flaunting that success because someone has to know about this success. And so What happens, again, and working with the men that I work with, what happens is that we can absolutely become exhausted with having to perform, because in most cases, that's what the success is. That's what that's what the benefits of that's the repercussions, I'll put it that way, of success. You first have to perform. The prerequisite is the performance. And the result of that performance is success. Again, subjective as it may be, but that is the destination. And oftentimes, again, the destination we can find is fleeting. I've accomplished all of these things on paper. I look great, but inwardly, this is where I come in as a coach, as an executive coach to high achieving men. Inwardly, in most cases, the high achieving men, absolutely, success is relative. Certainly, William, absolutely. And so, uh, as far as an executive coach, again, this is where I come in, working with men, helping them put meat on the bones, so to speak, helping them build substance in their lives and sustenance in their lives. Because without the sustenance and the substance in life that we acquire from the lessons in life, that we acquire from the lessons in life, that's how we eat, guys. That's how we consume. That's how a man's soul is fed, is through the lessons and the experiences, not just the experiences alone. Because oftentimes the experience alone gets us in trouble. But a man eats not only from his experiences, but he eats from the lesson, the being fractured at times as he's gone through the certain things. He eats through being fractured and fragments and doing the work and pulling the pieces back together of his life. Like I said, guys, this is not easy work, man. It's not easy work. But that's how a man eats. But here's the other piece of it. If a man eats on experiences alone, he then eventually gets full of himself. He either gets full of himself or he thinks that he's a nobody. But for the man who eats and understands and finds his purpose through the lessons and experiences and feeling what he needs to feel and going through that, getting through that that wilderness experience, so to speak. When a man eats on that alone, man, you better watch out. You better watch out for him, because that's a man who's found his purpose. And when a man finds his purpose, it's contagious, guys. So for us men, this is why it is so important for us to find our purpose. This is why it is so important for us to to know who we are, not according to what society has established for us, guys. That's not what I'm talking about. Knowing who you are through a belief system that you have created. Now, I am a believer. I'm a Christian. I'm not here to push my belief system on you, but I'm going to say this. You need a belief system that you are anchored in. You need a belief system, guys. This is absolutely a must. Again, I'm not here to facilitate, usher you into a place of your faith. That's not my job. That is not my job. I'm here to give you the give you the guts of this stuff, because without a belief system, guys, for any of us, without a belief system, we can find ourselves going to and fro, connecting with the false images and ideologies of what this society has created. We can find ourselves being persuaded and pushed and going to and fro and believing almost anything. Find ourselves having to be a chameleon. Find ourselves not being able to draw the line according to our own faith, according to our belief system. And this is oftentimes where a lot of us as men, we get caught up in that the belief system of this world, that has been established by a society, by a small group of people who don't know you and I. But again, because we have because we may not be anchored in our own belief system, we can find ourselves filling that void with their belief system. Because what happens is that, or a lot of times what happens is that, and this is there's a scientific term for it. And I can't remember it offhand, but there's a scientific term for it where you have I think it's like group something. I can't remember, but there's a scientific term for uh, 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 where people are easily persuaded to believe what the masses are, or what the masses are believing. And so for them to feel like there's for that individual to feel or make a decision based on their own understanding, based on what they see in front of them, oftentimes they will make a decision based on what the group believes. And in order for us as men to come out of the situations that we're in, we've got to be able to we've got to be prepared to build enough courage to go against that group mentality. Matter of fact, Bill, I think you showed a video on your if you're still here, I think you showed a video or a GIF or something on your Substack earlier, where it showed actually 3 lines. Majority of the people were going in the first line, the first door, and a lesser amount was going into the second door, the middle door, and yet the third door, only one person went into the third door. And I think that's a great example of what I'm discussing now, is that we as men, we have to be prepared to challenge the societal views and norms, because when we're not prepared to challenge those things, and I'm not necessarily saying to challenge those things because, or in a way from, oh no, I won't go, no, I won't go. No, I'm meaning that you have to be prepared to match apples with apples. You have to be prepared to have you have to be prepared to have an understanding of what you're going against. Because if you don't have an understanding of what you're going against, of what's out there, what's challenging your belief system, if you don't have an understanding of the thing that's challenging your belief system, because here's the thing, it's not necessarily just the information that's out there, it's the other people that we're surrounded by that challenge our belief system as well. As quiet as it's kept, oftentimes these people, we don't even know these people, but their behavior patterns, their just day-to-day operation of their lives, the media, these things influence us. And so we have to be prepared again to have that belief system, whatever it might be for you, and to be anchored in that belief system. Because as I mentioned earlier, our belief systems are like we're sending out an army, so to speak. And that army is oftentimes, our belief systems are oftentimes challenged with the belief system of this world that we live in. And so our hey Terry, thanks for joining. Appreciate Terry Cook. Appreciate you. We have to be challenged with be prepared to challenge the belief system that the world has created for us. And there is absolutely, and I say absolutely, I speak that in the sense, every sense of the word. Absolutely, there's a spiritual, a battle that's taking place with what we deem is correct. Again, belief system, from belief system to belief system. There's a spiritual battle that takes place, guys. This is absolutely on a much deeper level, but there's a spiritual battle that takes place behind the scenes. And so ultimately, it ends up being not what you or I see it as. It's a much bigger situation going underneath all of this. And it comes down to being the motive of man. And I think as men, we have to make our motivations clear, not only with our families, guys, and we're not making it about them or them out there or them behind me. No, we're making it about us, the reflection in the mirror. And we have to be clear about our own motives. And when we're not clear about our own motives, they're always going to produce results that we were not expecting. Results out of alignment with what we have expected. Because rest assured, whatever the motivation is, there's a level of expectation. And when the motivation is not clear, it will absolutely produce results that are unclear, or better yet, results that you did not ask for. And you can find yourself perpetually going back to the drawing board, trying to produce results in alignment with what you're asking for. But because the motivation and the wording, again, the heart here becomes about integrity, guys. Because the heart in the matter of, or the matters of the heart oftentimes are not integral. And because you're not integral, and again, this does not mean that a person is going out in a deliberate way trying to be dishonest. That's not what I'm implying. What I am saying is that because most of us in life, we've come up against, met people, and we ourselves have been walking and responding through life at times less integral fashion. And so we have to be conscious of our own motivations, especially if it is our idea to produce different results. We have to be aware of the results that we're looking for, and the only way to line up those results in accordance to what we are looking for is to make sure that our w- words have the right motivation behind them, are supported with the right motivation. You're saying what you meant to say. You're able to find the wording or the words to express yourself. And this is oftentimes, again, in dealing with the men that I work with. Oftentimes, the men that I work with, they're able to express themselves in the way of their profession, the things that they know to do and have become very successful in. But the other piece of it is I like to, again, have a title this discussion, it's the untold story, is that oftentimes the men have a challenge expressing themselves outside of those professional spaces. They oftentimes have trouble communicating themselves in a personal space, let alone an intimate space. And if you and I, as men, if we can't express ourselves again with the right motivation, even in intimate spaces, settings, or on a personal level, If we cannot express ourselves, again, finding the right motivation behind our words, and that integrity is 100% of something, whatever you may be inquiring of or expecting, integrity is 100% of that. And when we as men don't follow through with what we said we're going to do, especially over repeated amounts of time, different times in our lives when we have not uh, submitted to that and begin walking in integrity, the motivation doesn't line up with what we're asking for or what we're looking for. And so naturally, we get results that are not in line with what we're looking for. And now here's the thing, if you do that a few times in life, especially perhaps through a marriage or two or three, your professional career, uh, your personal relationships, excuse me, outside of your professional career, it's no wonder if we're as men are acting in that fashion. It's no wonder things once we reach the top of that summit that things are feeling like they're empty because there's a success that the world says, "Oh, hey, he is successful," and then there's a purpose that absolutely can make us feel not only feel, but make us become secure in who we are. Success alone doesn't do that, gentlemen. Success by itself doesn't make us feel secure, doesn't make us feel safe. And oftentimes we don't hear that word with men, but the reality of it is that men want to feel safe too. They want to be safe. And when a man finds his authentic self, he discovers that and begins to uncover those things. He can get to a place where he is now becoming the safety that he desires. And when we as men become the safety net, first becoming the safety net for myself, you becoming the safety net for yourself. When we as men can become the safety net in our lives, first to us, our children can feel safe. Our spouse, significant other, or partner can feel safe. But without that safety net that we've created, that we've established, that we've hand sewn and put together with the blood, sweat, and tears, without that net, again, it's no wonder why most of the men that I'm working with, once they reach the top of the summit, again, success in the eyes of, you know, how they perceive it, it's no wonder that they're feeling empty, feeling invisible, feeling like, what next, Curtis? If I had a dime for every question or every comment like that, I'd be a wealthy man. Seriously, a dime. If I had a dime for every comment, I would be a wealthy man. So, again, started this off by saying that we have to be prepared as men to deconstruct the lies. That's again, it takes courage, guys. All right, guys, share this out, man. If this conversation has been a blessing to you and you know another man that could use this conversation, share this out. If not now, watch the replay or send in the link for the replay. This is a good conversation, guys. This is the conversation that needs to be had with us as men, guys. This is a conversation that absolutely needs to be had, guys. Absolutely. And I think our next topic here and segue into this here is that we need to be as men. We oftentimes Oftentimes, as men, there's an identity crisis that we're dealing with, and I would even venture to say there's an identity crisis for the entire world. So it's not just men. And when I talk, guys, it's not to place a undue or an unjust burden on you. That's not the goal here. To say, hey, here, take this, hey, this, take this, and men are this, men are this. No, let me say this. I am a man, and I absolutely love being a man. That's not a pounding on the chest, but I'm secure in who I am as a man. Now I need to look into the camera for this. Surely. So here is the challenge oftentimes that we as men that a lot of men are dealing with. It's not so much, and when I say being a man is that man who's pounding in the chest, but being secure in who God created. You are a creation of God, and being secure in that, not allowing the perspective, the views of this world to have you uh, flexing on a false identity or flexing on an illusion that they have put together, something that you and I as men can find ourselves chasing. That's not what I'm talking about. But that security, where do you think we find it at? Where do you think we find that security at? That safety net that every man is looking for? We find it in a belief system. We find it in our belief system. I've talked about that pretty extensively, but I don't want to go back to that, but I just want to just really secure the point that most of what we are looking for, what we will be given access to, is going to be through a belief system. And when our belief system is secure, we are secure. Hence, without a secure belief system, we as men can find ourselves trying to define our identity. We can find ourselves trying to figure out who we are. And this is how powerful that belief system is, because within that belief system is our confidence. Within that belief system is our security as men. Within that belief system is our resilience. Within that belief system is our mindset. Within that belief system is that security net where we feel safe at it, even as men. But without the belief system, there ends up being an identity crisis that we as men can find ourselves trapped in, or that loop, so to speak. And I think that word loop is a great word, because without the security of a belief system that is rooted and grounded in understanding and that has been tested, without that, we can find ourselves as men on a perpetual loop, like a record or a cassette that's being looped, or a film that's being looped over and over, all related to our identity. And when our identity is not, and when we're not secure in our identity, we can absolutely look at our belief system. And when we're not secure in our beliefs, in our identity, we will grab our identity from what society has established or given us. And here's what I mean, and here's why I can say I'm 100% secure in that thought by itself. Because we as men, and just people in general, we're like sponges. and our thoughts and intellect, and we like to learn. Most of us like to learn, and that is just the nature of the human beings. We just like to learn and consume different things. So when a man does not know his identity, he doesn't know who he is. Again, grounded, secure, and rooted in his own belief system, where his belief system has been tested, and he can go out and walk in a position of authority. And I'm not saying that man who's pounding on his chest, but he can go out in a world that is not secure within themselves and still be secure and not feel that he has to adapt himself to the ideologies of the world. Matter of fact, they end up wanting to know, what do you have that I don't have? So here's the other piece of that too. A secure man is like a man who has a kingdom that is secure. That is, the walls and the gates have been fortified. He's got soldiers, so to speak. I'm speaking figuratively, but he's got soldiers encamped around the perimeter. He's got soldiers essentially everywhere. He's ready. But a man who has acquired his identity from a society that's from the views and perspective of society that's ever changing, that oftentimes is a insecure man. Is oftentimes a very insecure man. So identity is hugely important, gentlemen. It's hugely important. All right, guys, share this conversation out, guys. If this conversation has been a blessing to you, if it's feeding your soul, feeding your heart, things that you needed to hear, share this conversation out, guys. It's going to be, it's hopefully you'll replay it, if not one time, a few times, but share this conversation out. Share the wealth, guys. It's not about me. Excuse me. It's not about me just promoting myself, but promoting a message that's really just and that's my goal, guys. My goal is to help men set the captives free, guys. That's just reality. I'm not gonna say I know everything, but I know some things, guys. I know some things. And I know this information that I'm sharing with you is a blessing to you. Again, if that being the case, share this conversation out, guys. Add someone to this so that they're also being fed. If not tonight, again, the link for the replay will be here as well at some point. But back to the conversation. So identity oftentimes is what men are challenged with. If we are not secure in our belief system, again, a belief system that is rooted and grounded and secure, a belief system that has went up against the societal norms, so to speak, and it's now tested. And because it's tested, your intel, your army of soldiers, so to speak, again speaking figuratively, but your army of soldiers have come back with the intel, and now because you trust what the information that you received. Hey, Zakia, thank you for joining, sister. Appreciate you. Hey there. Appreciate that, Zakia. Thank you. So because you and I have sent out that again, we're secure in that belief system. And because we're secure in our belief system, we're anchored in that belief system. That belief system acts as a army of soldiers who've gone out and tested the water, so to speak, and they've come back with a victory, and they're sharing that, reporting that intel to you and I. And so, a man who is secure in his belief system, rooted and grounded a belief system that's rooted and grounded, that's been tested. He is secure in his identity. And without that identity, he is obviously unsecure or insecure. And I'll use it not only, I'll put it this way, I'll use insecure and unsecure. Both terms apply because insecurity, meaning that it's something that's coming from the inside, an internal thing. But unsecure, meaning that there are things that are not there are things that are not anchored down. And if they're not anchored down in here, guys, and in here, they're for surely not anchored down out there. So the security in here from the inside, it builds the security on the outside. This is an internal war, that battle that most of the times that we're fighting, guys. It's not so much about what they're saying out there; it's how much of what they've said out there we've allowed to get in here. And now that information out there, again, the behavioral systems and ideas of this society, their views and perspectives, um, it's influential for all of us. And so that's why it's so important to be secure in your belief system so that you're not influenced by those things. Because if they go against your belief system, rest assured, you will be a benefactor of the untold story. Because here's the thing, you don't get to tell your story if you have not come to a place of learning how to be authentic, become authentic. And when I say that, I don't want to make it seem like it's easy, guys, because it's not easy. This I don't normally swear, but this ish, I'll put it that way. It's not easy, ladies and gentlemen. It's not easy. Think about it. And this is why it's so important for us to give ourselves grace along the way, ladies and gentlemen who are listening. This is why it's important for us to give ourselves grace along the way and for us to forgive ourselves from coming into the very thing that we may have found out to be untrue, but without certain knowledge, we believed it and we jumped in with both feet. We accepted it, and years later, we'd find out that wait a minute, that's not true, and we can find ourselves in a position where, again, going back to this identity, having our identity anchored in on something that's not true, having our identity anchored on a belief system that can't hold water. You talk about someone destroying who you are. You talk about being destroyed for the fact that, or feeling like someone's pulled the carpet out from under you. It can absolutely be disheartening. It can be soul wrenching when we find out that certain truths or certain truths that we once believed in really aren't true. So again, this absolutely goes back to identity, but it also goes back to a place of having the courage to face those things, having the courage to face the very things that you believed in, that you believe in, and ask the question, why is he or why is she going in a different direction? Let me begin to ask questions. So it can absolutely, again, be disheartening when we find ourselves feeling like we've been led astray and something that we have believed in for just years. Again, that perhaps in most cases have become a tradition of how we see the world or how we see things and people, even our different faith. So it can be absolutely soul wrenching, soul crushing. And because of that, it affects our identity. And when our identity is affected, so is the image of how we see ourselves, because we have placed a level of security in what the world or society has created for us, because our own belief system could not and did not stand the test of time. And I started to see this earlier. I didn't finish my thought, but the reality of it is that there's a void for all of us that's looking to be fulfilled on some level. And when we're not secure in who we are as far as our identity, we can find ourselves searching, and there's nothing wrong with searching. Absolutely, there's nothing wrong with searching. But because we don't know who we are and we are searching, we can find ourselves feeling that void being filled with the views of the society, the group thinking that I mentioned earlier. So we can find ourselves giving ourselves over to other forms or ideas that really did not come from us. So they're not tested. They haven't been through. We don't know where it's going to take us. So we have to be, as men, or just people in general, we have to be prepared to march to the beat of a different drummer. Be prepared to ask those tough questions. That's how you and I are going to get out of this thing. If you're dealing with something that's got you perplexed, and I'll go out on a limb and say this, a lot of what is out there in the way of news, guys, it's sent to distract you. That's why I don't watch the news. I'm not saying don't be informed. I'm not saying that I don't care. I absolutely do care. But again, going back to the belief system, if you and I are not secure in our belief system, we will inadvertently, and I'll use that word, allow them to pull us out from a space, and we can find ourselves then filling that space, that void that we're experiencing. We can find ourselves filling that space with the rhetoric that comes from what they have put out there, mainstream media and all different types and forms of media, social media. We can find ourselves filling that void, consuming it, so to speak. Obviously, not in a literal sense, but um, there's a there's there is a something in us, all of us, every last one of us, that void when we're looking for the truth, because that's essentially what we're all looking for. That's essentially what we're all looking for. We're all looking for the truth. And what happens is that we are having to go through seemingly, almost like a literal hell to get to the truth. So that's what the void is about in most cases for a lot of what we're dealing with, guys. That's what the void is. The void is that our soul, your very soul, is seeking the truth. That's the reason why a lot of the men that I work with, again, as I mentioned earlier, I work with high achieving men, That's the reason why a good 90 to 95% of the men that I work with are not satisfied. They've got all kinds of goodies and cars and houses and can leave and do the thing that they would desire to do on any given day. But most of them, again, nearly 95% of them are in a place for saying, Curtis, what next? Perhaps that's where some of you are at. What next? Because your soul is searching for the truth. Your soul is hungry for the truth. And all of this other stuff has been put in our way, and we have used it and sufficed it. We have used it for a time to suffice as a truth. But even that, which we have used for a time, is now coming unglued. It's falling apart at the seams. And even in our own hearts, we're saying, no, no, that's not quite it. And we're still yet moving on to the next scene. And so now, even in our older age, life can feel absolutely overwhelming because we can still find ourselves searching. Why haven't I reached this place yet? Because in that search, we're finding ourselves intermingling in between. Do I trust the process that's taken place? Do I trust that pulling that I'm feeling on the inside? Did I trust what I just heard? Because I know it didn't come from my mom, didn't come from my mother, my sister, or any other family member. Do I trust what I just heard? Do I trust what was spoken to me, maybe through a dream? I heard so and so or this person talking. I can hear them talking, but I hear something else talking to me. And I'm saying that not to spook you, but I'm saying that there is a God who gives us direction. He gives us direction. And many of us have just not come to trust that. We've, we haven't come to trust that because we find ourselves intermingling with what is out there, out in this world, and the different views, perspectives, and ideologies, because those views and stuff that's out there, typically it doesn't fall in line with the information or the resource that's feeding us. And so because we don't trust in the resource, the spread that God has prepared for every last one of us, because we don't trust the volume of what he gives to us, we can find ourselves searching and destitute and desire, and that the views of this society and perspectives from this society, we can find ourselves eating on that and wanting more and more of it. And somehow it still just does not satisfy us. So consequently, guess what? There's an untold story. There's an untold story that a man will never get to because he was distracted by trying to fulfill the story out there. Out there. That story that's out there. The story that they created out there. Because what happens, most of us have fallen into the story, fallen in line, in alignment with the story that they have created. So, in fact, that makes it an untold story for you and I. meaning that in most cases, we can be so busy working to tell the story of those outside that we forget to tell the story, or we don't come in alignment with the story that God wants us to tell and share with others. Because rest assured, if you told the story that God told you to share with others, you could absolutely see some people saved and delivered. And I speak that in every sense of the word, saved from the calamity from which this world is pulling us towards, like a pig going into the slaughter. It's not pretty. It's not pretty, ladies and gentlemen. So you don't have to be a minister of the gospel or anything like that. That's not what I'm talking about. But when your story, when you and I are prepared to tell the untold story, not telling the perpetual story that they've been sharing with us and saying that this is what success looks like, and now measure yourself according with what we have put out there. No, that's not what I'm talking about. There's a story in each side and inside each of us that's completely separate from the story that we've been telling others. And unfortunately, because of the many distractions that this world has placed out there, deliberately, because the goal is to keep you and I distracted. The goal is to keep you and I building up their story, telling their story, building their house, promoting them. That's the goal. But as long as we find ourselves in that seat, sitting on their throne, as long as they have, as long as we have done the things that were necessary in alignment or in accordance to what they may have spoken, sitting on the throne that they've created and being afraid that we could be dethroned at any moment. When life has any of us in that situation, you're not truly enjoying success. And I get it. Success is subjective, relative, again, to the person. Sure, I get it. But I'm sharing with you from experience. Many of the men that I have worked with, high achieving men that I've worked with. And it's not to say that these high achieving men are any better than any other men. That's not the point. I'm saying to you, even high achieving men are dealing with the very same thing, an emptiness, a void that cannot be fulfilled, not just through success alone or their relative idea of what success looks like, not through that alone. But when a man eats and he is able to feed his family, not just on the things that he's accomplished, but when a man finds his purpose, a man comes into who he is authentically, discovers that. It is absolutely a process. But when a man discovers that, he can not only feed his family, feed himself, he can feed his family, he can feed his community, he can also feed a nation. Perhaps, obviously, not all by himself, but it's the beginning and the process of a man coming into who he truly is, doing away with what society says about him or who society says he should be, doing away with that coming in alignment with a belief system that is rooted and grounded. And that's been tested now. And that now his belief system has been tested. He can walk through the wilderness unscathed. That he knows how to pull out his sword as needed, meaning that he's fallen back on his belief system like a sword, the knowledge that he's acquired like a helmet, the knowing, the truth that that he now stands in. That's what a man shares with his family. That's what a man gives to his community. Consistency. Having to go against the ideas of the world. We need more men ready to discover themselves, discover the truth about themselves. We need more men ready and prepared to tell the untold story. Because when more men step up to the plate and begin to discover themselves in authenticity and who are not afraid of the potential backlash that they may get, or they have put the rest their egos. We need more men ready, more soldiers ready to go through this training, so to speak. We need more men ready to tell their story from a space of the right motivation. We need more men who are ready to throw the false sense of security through the societal views and perspectives, to throw that false sense of security into the garbage and just toss it, get rid of it, because it's all a lie. We need more men who are ready to challenge their own belief system and to be prepared to become anchored in a belief system that has been tested. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to go through things even if you are anchored in your belief system. Absolutely. It does not mean that you're not going to go through things or have challenges, have rough days. No, it doesn't mean that. What it does mean, it means that I'm secure and that whatever comes against me in my belief system, I'm able to weather the storm as I'm going through this process. Because when we as men are secure in ourselves, rest assured, there are going to be some ungodly things that are going to try to attach themselves to us. Some different views and perspectives that are not in alignment with what we believe. And because they will try to attach themselves, again, the beliefs and societal views and perspectives, they're absolutely influential, even to a person who's grounded and rooted in a particular belief system. They can absolutely be influential. And so sometimes we can be shaken up by the influence. And find ourselves having to go back to our belief system. We need more men, guys. This is a lot of work. This is a lot of work, gentlemen. Not necessarily just getting the message out here, but doing the work on ourselves, guys. First and foremost, uh, taking the plank out of your own eye before trying to take the speck out of your brother's eye. It's a lot of work. It takes courage. I'm going to finish this up with the myth of external validation. Wrap it up here, guys. So I again thank you all for being a part of this conversation. You guys have been definitely students. I appreciate that. Robert, thank you for joining. Lamar Sykes, William, you can call me Bill. Thank you for being here, man. Appreciate you. Terry Cook, thank you for being here as well. And Zakia, and I think it's Lamar. Maybe. Okay, hopefully I've mentioned all of you. So again, thank you all for being here. So we're going to end it here with myth of external validation, and we'll definitely end it on a good note. So this external validation is oftentimes it is, it is just uh, it is the way of the man who doesn't know himself. The way of the man, and let me put it this way. I don't want to again make it seem like I'm against men because I'm definitely not against men. But and I say men, and in terms, you'll kind of have to try and catch it. But in terms of when I speaking man, I'm also speaking mankind as well. So because a lot of this stuff absolutely applies to women as well. So it's not just about placing a burden on men that we can achieve, but it's a burden on society, guys, men and women alike, and that we all share in this burden. So this myth of external validation, it is very prominent in the way of men who have just uh, acquired success, men who have reached the top of that summit. In most cases, it is highly prominent that these men are looking and desiring the external validation. And in most cases, that's what gives them the boost. And this is an ego thing, and women have egos too. Let's put that out there too. Women have egos. People, humanity, has an ego. All of us have an ego at times. But when that ego is out of check, is not in check, so to speak, or out of alignment with a reality, it begins to hang its coat on the external validation. And the external validation is really what feeds is really the sustenance and the substance for the ego. It's what it thrives on. It thrives on the external validation. It thrives on me, me, me. Look at what I did. Look at what I did. Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's cool that you did that, but look what I did. Look what I did. Look at me. And as men, when we are dealing with that external validation, or having to have that external validation fill that void, and that's that back to that void, when we having to have that external validation fulfill that void, it is a sense of false validation. Again, uh, though success is relative, and I wouldn't even say subjective in the eyes of those who are looking, absolutely. And people measure success according to, or we measure success at times according to how we see it. And depending on how another person presents it. So it's, again, two different trains of thought there for how we sometimes see success. But oftentimes this external validation for success is absolutely anchored in the ego. ego, ego. And because it is anchored in by the ego, or that's what the ego needs. It needs to be fed that. Uh, you often get men who are not secure within themselves. You often get men who are, excuse me, at times very angry. Sorry. You often get men who can be hostile, who are very impatient, short with others. Not only short with others, but short with themselves. There's a inward hostility or anger that a lot of times these men who are seeking this external validation, because we have to understand again, it's like feeding. I don't know, for lack of a better word, I'll put it out there, for lack of a better word, but it's like feeding something. Something has a an appetite, an insatiable appetite, meaning that something that cannot be satisfied, and that bottomless pit, if you will. And and so when we're dealing with men or people in general who are in need, again, who have reached the top of a success mountain, and according to themselves, they're doing very well, and even to others, they're doing very well. And again, they look great on paper, but oftentimes they are in need of that external validation because that's how they feel great about themselves. That's how they, in most cases, feel good about themselves. That's how they see themselves in the mirror because someone has told them they look great, great job. You did wonderful on that project, blah, blah, blah. And this client was able to write a check to us because of the work you've done. Again, the external validation is often me, me, me with the person who, again, who has reached the top of success mountain and who is thriving just on success alone. It's often held together by external validation. And hence, many a times the men that I'm working with, they often feel empty, so to speak. They often feel, or I often hear, what next, Curtis? What next? What am I going to do with all of this? I mean, for all intents and purposes, sure, they're successful, again, on paper, all kinds of different toys and different things, but they too are searching to have that void fulfilled. They too are also searching, but the external validation, a lot of times with the men and women alike who have reached this success mountain, who are at the top of the summit, they need more and more and more of that. And at some point, what happens, I believe what happens, at some point, they stop believing it. They stop believing the thing that that helped boost them there. They stop believing it. And in actuality, they're looking for something. It was what they needed for a particular time, or at least what they believed they needed for a particular time, and that's what the ego needed. And at some point, the truth and the pull that, even for the man or the high achieving man or woman who reaches the success summit, at some point through just the nature of who we are, those individuals were saying like, okay, I don't even believe this stuff anymore. And so now they find themselves trying to come into a reality, the truth. They find themselves trying to unmask the person who's been masked. And so the work that needs to be done oftentimes with the continuously acceptance of the external validation. Give me more, give me more, give me more. Again, it's like trying to fill a bottomless pit. Someone who is just constantly hungry. This ultra ego, so to speak, it's never satisfied. And so here's I'm going to leave you with this here, and I'll share this one last thing. But here's the thing about um, people, just in general, who are not satisfied, or these these different things, and I've heard the word shadow. I'll use that word. These different shadows that have attached themselves to us. Oftentimes, these shadows cannot be satisfied. The appetites of these different shadows that attach themselves along the way as we're trying to find ourselves along the way from all this stuff that's been dumped on us and trying to work out certain things. And as we're trying to uh, make our way and to get to the truth and go through the highs and the lows and the valleys of life, oftentimes these shadows that attach themselves to us, such as the external validation, such as the anger, the hostility, and a host of other different things that come along that again that attach themselves to us as shadows, not of who we truly are, but of a shadow, a misrepresentation of who we are. Oftentimes, these things come with appetites that cannot be fulfilled, insatiable desires. And those insatiable desires can take a man through a journey that he never thought he would go. He didn't start off thinking that way, but because he ends up being pulled by the very desires that the world has created for him, or the different check-in posts, so to speak, because he ends up following the map. Again, in most instances, he doesn't have a belief system that has been tested, that he's grounded in, doesn't have a secure root system. And because it doesn't have a secure root system, again, it has not checked off the boxes, so to speak. And because it has not checked off the boxes, he can find himself being led by the many desires that will come up through life. The many desires that will poke their ugly head up, the shadows, so to speak, that will now attach themselves to him. And now he has all kinds of fantasies and thoughts going through his mind because of the different shadows that have attached themselves. They're, in fact, in most cases, a misrepresentation of him, but it's what society puts out there, hoping that you and I will open the door to it, hoping you and I would pause for a moment to consider that. And the very moment we pause to consider it or to give it thought, we've opened the door to it. And when we open the door to it, it attaches itself to us. And interesting enough, after it attaches itself to us, it doesn't come with just one desire. It comes with a host of other different desires that will absolutely, potentially take us out of the game. And for that, we end up unable to share the untold story that's within every last one of us. All right, guys. That being said, I hope this information has been a blessing to you. Hopefully, this information has encouraged you, encouraged your soul. That is the goal of it: is to get down to the core, of who you and I are. That's the goal. Where it's not a surface conversation. That's was not the intention. So, if that's what you came here for, I apologize for disappointing you. But this is not a surface conversation. I typically don't have those surface level conversations. I'm either coming with something or I'm not coming. So that's just kind of how I am. So if this information for the gentlemen who have been connected with me or um, uh, that have connected with me, if this information has been a blessing to you and you want to know more about this, what I've been talking about, absolutely feel free to reach out to me in the DMs here on Substack. I'm actually not streaming to any other platform, just to Substack. So if this information has been a blessing to you, again, share it out. And as a man, if you believe that this information can be helpful to you, uh, again, reach out to me in the DMs and say, "Hey, Curtis, I need help. I like what you were talking about." Just indicate that you want to know more, and I'd be gladly to connect with you through a conversation. So, uh, that being said, guys, I'm going to say goodnight, all. Again, thank you, Robert Kennedy, if you're still here. Thank you, Lamar Sykes. Thank you, William. You can call me Bill for being a part of this conversation. Thank you, Terry Cook, for being a part of the conversation. And thank you, my good friend, Zakia. Thank you for joining. I appreciate you, sister, and appreciate all of you. So, again, good night, all. And we will see. Ciao for now. Talk to you later. Bye.